right, so thank you for all of you who have come back for our final speaker of this evening, Andrii, talking about data security. Also, he's just started a new job, so yay, congratulations to him as a cloud platform at DMG Media. So yeah, over to you now, Andrii.
1, 2. All right. So, good evening, everybody. My talk will be pretty much a lightning talk. It will be kind of a bit more storytelling about data security and why we should care about it. To start things off, a little about me. As you can see, I'm a visual learner rather than like textual, I guess. I don't know. I like to run, cycle, and swim away from my troubles. I've also been through a few too many things. So I've been a data engineer, network engineer, a bit of cloud engineer, and now platform engineer. And it ended up more of a passive kind of thing because I spent quite a few years in consulting. And a beautiful picture in the bottom is something that I spent last year and a half on. It's an awesome architecture that it'll be as an extra slide at the end, but this is what the story will be working towards too. So there are 3 whys that I would like to address in this beautiful presentation. First is why security is essential for fostering trust and enabling development. The second is why security is not one size fits all. And the third is why security should be proactive and not reactive. Because kind of like driving a car, you don't install the brakes when the car crashes. You want to install it before. So as you can see, this will be also a small kind of evolution. So to start things off, a bit more about my background kind of. I used to work mostly with NHS providers, so that's why there'll be a few news article titles to keep it entertaining. So when a cloud security fails, I look at the NHS and the real cost. On average, a single trust can get somewhere in between 500 million to 1 billion in budget and still complain about not having enough resources. And so the average cost of a data breach globally is around 8.8 million. You want to ask why? Well, you still have some cases like this where it is 6 million fine. So it is close to being true. This happened, this was a ransomware attack in 2022 where a ransomware could gain access to some of the clinical systems because one user account did not have an MFA. We complain about MFA nowadays, but 2 years ago, it cost some company almost now 6 million and 82,000 people, or close enough, for having their data being leaked everywhere. And to be fair, most of the time people will say, you know what, this is not much of an issue. But 890 people of those also had their home details and access to their home details leaked out because there were patients who had care from home. And so this became kind of an issue. But of course, for every news like this, you'll get some article where they say, don't worry, don't panic. Data leaks all the time. And with this mixed messages, this came from Scottish NHS, where there was some leak of medical information and discussions between some clinicians. They said, okay, yes, we have big data kind of going out into the Australian Wild West and the dark web. It's all right. It's like nobody's actually using the data, but the public trust does go down and the public loses some kind of trust in the NHS or any kind of service they would provide. It's like needed their data. And then when you don't have the panic, they also start questioning where their NHS data is going. So although 87% of national kind of population believes and trusts the NHS data, or it's like that the NHS will keep their data safe, 43% of the respondents, for example, from one survey, were not too happy about some third-party companies such as Palantir providing the services of building one of the biggest data platforms for NHS England. And this is why, for example, security becomes quite important because aside from Palantir, to be fair, Microsoft, AWS, Google, all of them are also third-party companies. They're not really UK-based. So therefore, it's important to kind of emphasize why security is good, why we are kind of securing data as much as we can and keep it safe. So far, so good? Yes. So we'll start from a treehouse, which may be fun, but they're not secure enough. Usually, just like a treehouse, there are no doors, there are no windows. Usually, you can get access to it. So in a relevant kind of cloud terms, this would be your S3 storage with public access, but maybe It's like nobody has access to it yet because you will still have to know the public endpoint and things like that. To make it a bit more secure, you would start with things like identity management and MFA. So things like 2022 ransomware attack don't happen. You would also do a bit more access control and RBAC. So this is more about role-based access, right? We have to, although we can actually authenticate users, we also have to make sure they're authorized to access the right things at the right time. And then you also do some data encryption, whether it's at rest, whether it's at transit, whether anywhere it's like data is moving or not. You can have multiple ways to making sure that your data is encrypted. So for example, as storage accounts, it's at rest, and databases as well, you have some methods. And for networks, it's like implementing TLS 1.2 protocols. And again, although you may have all of these things, with great power comes great responsibility. Because, for example, you can be Google and still delete one storage account worth 125 billion pension accounts, and people will be very sad. And the only way that people have actually saved this is by having a backup in a different cloud. So, once you build a safer house, you need to tailor it to your needs. And by this, I mean a bit more about data itself. So for example, like NHS or any other kind of data provider and organization, there's a lot of data, ton of data. Some of it may be more secure, some of it may not need so much security because if it's just your medical history records, very secure. If it's some order information about some pharmacy without any budget information, that may be less secure and less needed to be encrypted across the whole board. This will make sure that you can save some money, but also saves a lot of development costs for the people. Because we had some times where people would say, oh yeah, I have terabytes of data, all of it need to be encrypted. And you tell them, well, this will take a month. And they're like, we don't have a month. Well, let's then think, what data do you actually need to have encrypted? And this comes down to kind of clarifying that, yeah, sometimes you have to actually go through proper data classification processes and procedures to understand what level of kind of tailored security do you need. Now on to the next. And then we're on the road to the Fort Knox, where essentially we kind of have an extra wall around our beautiful safe house. There is some data classified in their safe houses, but also some publicly available if needed. And then we have some security here as a video camera kind of for auditing and monitoring. So with further details, yes, first we include active monitoring, like for example, where Antonella has mentioned earlier, where it becomes very difficult to go through all the logs and making sure it's like you understand where the data moves, how it moves. It's very important to actually implement this quite early on, because then as you scale up and your solution becomes much bigger and much more complicated, it is very important to actually understand where the data flows, where the users interact with it, and things like that. The second one is the easier one, is the firewall and virtual networks. I only say easier one because you can set up a whole firewall, but if you say it's too expensive, you can go for network security groups, and you can say for root tables and say, well, you know what, I'm a one-man team, I can manage it myself. But if you want to make your life easy, just go for firewall. And the final one is backups and disaster recovery, because just like with the Google case scenario, because of one man who insisted that they will have to have one backup on AWS account rather than just Google, it saved them a ton of money and hopefully a bonus or a promotion for the guy or the lady. But it is also important to note that the backup and disaster recovery doesn't come only to the data that's stored in the storage account, it also comes to the points like VMs, for example. We have cases or projects where we provide VMs for research institutes, and we have people coming with £1 million funding to do some research, data science on those VMs. If that VM disappears or something happens to it, all the research that was on that VM also disappears. So it's important to note that not only your data stored in the storage account, but also on some of the actual compute resources is important to make sure to be backed up and be ready for disaster. And this comes to zero trust policy, where, like this beautiful comic has said, sometimes you may not even end up getting access to your own goddamn thing. But it is important and viable to understand that all of these things do help. They come with pros and cons, and they're important to keep in mind. So, as a summary, from level 1 to level 3, we have on level 1 publicly accessible storage space. On level 2, it's more about identity management, access controls, and data encryption as a kind of foundation to make sure you have a nice safe house. And then on a level 3, once you're happy with your easier kind of foundations, you can build up on building up active monitoring, logging systems, ensuring that most of your data is backed up and ready to be recovered, and maybe some virtual networks and firewalls to keep the communications private. If anyone was curious, this is what it looks like in the end. So it's a bit more beautiful than London Underground map, but I can take you shortly through it. This project was built by Microsoft. It's called Azure TRE, Trusted Research Environment. And the intention behind this was that any hospital could have this set up on their cloud, where they would have a core management group with all the resources that they need and all of their data if need to be hosted. And then on this right-hand side, you'll have all the resources federated for the researchers. So as a researcher with £1 million, I can come in and say, look, I don't want to access your direct data and your environment, but I want a secure environment where I can do my research. And then we tell them, why not? You can have some of your VMs, you can have some of your data science units. It's all private, it's in a virtual network. You can have also your own Git server if you want. And we'll also make sure that with things like Nexus, you'll get only the packages that you want. And we'll make sure you don't get any other access. And all of this will be in a private. So therefore, no public access, nothing accessible except the things that you really need. And then, yeah, you'll have a firewall. That's it. Thank you very much.
Wow, that was
Any
truly a
question?
lightning talk. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Well, I don't know if I needed that for my question. Thank you for the talk, by the way.
Thank you.
My question is around something that bothers me quite a bit. My password, I don't have a cat. That's the first thing.
Okay.
But the second thing is that my password is quite secure, I would say. Why? You haven't talked about changing passwords, but that's something.
Oh, yeah, we're getting there. My pain too. Sorry.
So my question is around, do you believe in changing passwords every so often, and why?
Personally, I don't. So as I said, I'm still getting into security, but the one thing that I don't like is actually having to change my password, only because it comes from human behavior, where you can have the brightest password ever, like pen, pineapple, orange pen, and when they tell you to change it again, all you will do, because you don't have your time and you have your boss calling you, you'll add number 1 and you'll say, I'm more secure. And this is why I don't believe in changing passwords. In the recent organization that I joined, they even let me to choose my own BitLocker password, because they said, man, look, we're not making you change shit. I'm like, thank you. And I fell in love. So yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers.
And yet, okay.
Hello, Andrii.
Hello.
Very interesting, thanks. I come from the AI space, and I would like to know, how would you balance the security of your architecture infrastructure with the fact that you need to deliver solution within like a very short amount of time?
Thank you. So it all depends, of course, on how much resource do you have. So if you have 5 people doing the AI solution, you can have one person consider, hey, what about security? And it doesn't have to be zero trust. So this is why we're going from levels and being kind of balanced, right? So on the easiest solution, you can still have identity management RBAC set up, and that will be the easiest possible way to already secure yourself enough. But then you can also have all of your services going and developing. And actually, if you understand access control quite well and identity management, you can have service principals, which is essentially a single unit to get access to all the things you need. So if you have even people changing from job to job, or somebody, because of quick development, needs to shift jobs, they'll still have access to everything. So you don't actually have to worry about adding more people to development process, and let people like data scientists, ML engineers to actually work on their POC in peace. Thank you.
One final one, and then we're done. If anyone has any more. Okay. Oh, okay.
So you specifically talked about NHS data, right? So it's patients'
Yep.
data. And you also mentioned like patients and people don't like to share their data very openly.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think this question often might come up, like how my data is getting used and how we can answer that? I mean, at least to the NHS data team or the team that we are working for, to what kind of architecture we should follow to make sure that we can also answer the people that your data is not being shared openly with
So rather than an architectural question, I think it's more of a communication thing, and also more of so when you say how is your data being used, the first thing that comes to my mind is data lineage. And you tell them, look, all right, this is where your data goes. For example, let's say Trust or NHS England. And then we say things like your data is anonymized, to be fair, because also to mention this, we do have anonymization processes happen so that any data that gets out of the Trust silos and stuff is still pseudo-anonymized. So therefore, you have some level of security that, like reassurance that your data is not identifiable entirely. And so this is what they work with. And it's enough of data to actually, for people to work with. In one of the trusts, we did this with leaflets. So we did actually print out and made communication campaign to patients when after the patient's experience survey, we had a little kind of paper to slide in and say, look, this is how your thing's used, because we wanted to actually increase patients' engagement with opt-in and opt-out when it was introduced. And it did quite help with kind of few bullet points and saying how their data is anonymized and where does it actually go. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our evening. Thank you, Andrei, Antonella, and Krishna. And yeah, I think we can mill around for a little while. And then if you're staying